Hello and welcome to Film Seizure. Today we are covering Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, written by Charlie Kaufman and directed by Michel Gondry. My name is Chuck Moore, and with me as always are Jeff and Jason. Hey guys.
Howdy.
Hello, and your
I'm here.
fancy Frenchy French.
Oh man, I wish I could do a good French accent because Michel Gondry has one of the tippy top French accents when he speaks English. Oh my gosh, it's almost unintelligible.
Sacre bleu, Monsieur Popsicat.
Latrine.
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 Yeah, all my French accents comes from Top Secret. But anyway, yes, Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind. We're in the second week of. I guess there's no theme.
Well,
for
there's
this month,
no
really.
thing. It's the second week of March. You know,
Yep.
I mean, and this movie, I believe, came out in March. Came out in March of 2004.
Nice.
Yeah, how about that? Happy
Word.
something anniversary.
Yeah. So, what is Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind? It's a.
It's a little.
It's kind of-
It's a little bit of a sci-fi movie. It's a little bit of a horror movie. There's some elements of horror in it.
And some comedy.
Yeah, it's a little bit of
It's
a
a-
rom-com.
It kind of runs the gambit. Gambit? Both of them. It runs both of them. But yeah, this is, pretty much a Jim Carrey vehicle. But as we talked about last week, Carrey is not in his normal kind of role here. He's against type, as I think you guys said with Bruce Willis
Yes.
last week. So it was kind of, Truman Show came out before this, right? Yes, much before this. But
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
this is maybe the second movie where Jim Carrey kind of plays a serious or a more serious role. Is not his over-exaggerated self.
Man in the Moon.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah,
I
Man,
think-
Man on the Moon was 99, something like that.
Mhm.
98.
I still
99?
kind of find it, even though that's a drama, since he's playing Andy Kaufman, it's still over the top because Andy
Well, because
Kaufman
he's playing
is over
Andy. Yeah, he's playing Andy.
Yeah.
Sure, but he's got to really dial in some pretty significant emotion to that role.
Yeah, I agree. And he really sells Andy Kaufman in that role. Sometimes when I think of Andy Kaufman, I see Jim Carrey in my head, and that's a testament to how good
I would honestly point to Liar Liar as maybe the first time where we got a little bit of range from Jim Carrey.
I love that movie.
It's a good movie. It's a good movie. I don't know how where that stands in the
That was
pantheon of well received or well liked movies, but I think it's still considered to be.
Yeah, no, I think because it's the one where he had given up the shtick a little bit. I think after
Yeah.
Cable Guy, I think he was kind of told, it's like, you got to dial the shit back because Cable Guy was bad.
It's getting old. It's getting old now. Show us something different.
Exactly.
So we made Liar Liar, Truman Show, and Man in the Moon back to back to back. That was
Well,
a
Me,
3-year
Myself,
run.
and Irene was in there someplace too. Wasn't
That was after. That was
That
after
was
Man
after?
in the Moon. Yep.
I like Me, Myself, and Irene, but I like I like the Farrelly Brothers movies because even though they had the gross out stuff, they also had a lot of heart.
They do.
Yeah,
have a
like
lot of
Outside
heart.
Providence is
Yeah,
very heartfelt movie.
yeah, and
Shallow Hal.
yeah.
Is extremely heartfelt.
yeah, and that's a movie either you get what it's saying or you're a jerk about it.
Right.
But I felt like Me, Myself, and Irene was one of those movies where it's like we can get a little bit of every kind of Jim Carrey,
Yeah.
So yeah,
And I think those are his best movies. I'll be honest, I really like Jim Carrey in general. I was worn out on him around the time that, Cable Guy came out. It did have the funny Star Trek scene in it, though.
sure.
Cable Guy is funny.
It is
funny.
It's got some funny moments for sure. But Jim had run his course, right? From, Living Color,
'cause,
being Fire Marshal Bill to all that stuff
Yeah,
after.
you can only hang on to that much of manic comedy for so long.
Right.
You know, and by the time he did, I know a lot of people like When Nature Calls, the second Ace Ventura.
That has some really bad moments in it.
I don't even know if I've seen it, to be
I've
honest.
seen it, but it's like I don't remember anything from it. And
It's
it was
likely where you learned the word guano, I'm guessing.
Do I know the word guano?
I knew what guano was. I am
I'm
a
joking. I'm
I am a
joking.
shitologist. I know what
Yes, you
guano
are.
is.
Yes, you are. Yes, you are.
No, but it was just kind of one of those things where it's like it wears, he wore out, but he also could prove to be a pretty good serious actor too. I think Man on the Moon kind of set the stage for him to go into the 2000s with that kind of a little bit more serious tone and a little bit more measured.
Yeah,
And
definitely.
I think he's an interesting person. I you know, some of his art is kind of fascinating.
I was going to bring that up
It is.
because I was curious and I didn't get a chance to look this up. If the drawings that are in this movie that are pretty, evident throughout the film, if he actually did those. It seems like he might have.
It's actually the drawings of the little kid that Mike Myers played, on SNL.
And I like to do drawings.
They just somehow got that as a problem. And they're like, we're going to write a movie around this.
Yeah.
No, I assume he probably did do some of that.
Yes, so we have him and Kate Winslet, who's wonderful all the time, I think, personally.
I read a little bit about her while I was watching this, and she is somebody I suspect when she walks into a room, it's like the fucking queen walking in, like not in a bad way. Like it's like she is here for fucking business, and either you get with that or you get the fuck out of the way.
Yeah,
and she seems very intimidating.
Even very young. Like I don't know where this falls in her filmography. I'm not looking at it right now, but I think the first time I saw her was in Heavenly Creatures, the Peter Jackson film, which.
Well, that was her debut.
It is her debut? Okay. Mm-hmm. I adore her in that movie, and I love that movie. It kind of, in that era at the time, Peter Jackson cemented him as my favorite director. Then, I don't hold that same opinion now, but he just couldn't miss with me.
Sure.
Back then.
Well, no, that was his gateway into making movies that were a little bit more like the Spielbergian type of movies, where he was kind of inheriting that mantle from Spielberg, who had changed. After Schindler's List, Spielberg
went down a serious route.
Yeah, he did. And he doesn't make the types of movies and he certainly doesn't make the movies like he did early on, because he changed as a person, dealing with like being a father and dealing with, those earlier movies dealt with his issues with his father. It all changed. And here was Peter Jackson, who could do things that was somewhere around a Robert Zemeckis or Steven Spielberg type, especially with Frighteners, which we talked about. And certainly with Meet the Feebles. You could really see that with those puppets that were fucking each other. What I was ultimately getting to was like he wanted to do a King Kong movie, which was a very Spielbergian goal that he wanted to do, and
right.
So back to Kate Winslet. What we have in her by the time this movie comes out is a thrice nominated Academy Award actress.
In the biggest movie of all time.
Was in the biggest movie of all time. Like Jeff said, very regarded as very dignified, right? And would take like Shakespearean type roles, Jane Austen type roles, like big, sort of important, if you will, roles. So she's against type in every way in this movie. She is playing kind of a disheveled mess.
She's the manic dream girl.
Well, she's kind of a deconstruction of the manic
Sure.
pixie dream girl.
But this was during
yes.
the era that these types of characters proliferated through independent film like this.
Proliferated.
Yeah, how about that?
They did.
Look at the big brain on Jeff.
So she is anything but together in this movie, right? She is. It's not a role you would typically imagine. You wouldn't imagine seeing Kate Winslet play a role where her character had different colored hair, right? It just doesn't seem. It doesn't seem like the type of role she would be in. So it's intriguing. It's an intriguing kind of thing going in, seeing these two characters sort of almost play a reversal of each other, right?
Yeah.
And because it's kind of like, like you speaking of the Farrelly brothers, and so you wouldn't see Meryl Streep in one of their movies,
right?
It's kind of, she's kind of the British Meryl Streep. It's like she commands a certain type of movie to get what she wants to do out of a movie, and what she can bring to a movie.
Yeah, definitely. Go ahead, Jason.
And then you've got Michel Gondry, who really hadn't made a big splash in film yet when he made this movie. He had made another picture with Charlie Kaufman, the writer of Eternal Sunshine of the Spotless Mind, a movie called Human Nature, which isn't very good. It's kind of goofy. It was, I want to say, the first screenplay that Charlie Kaufman produced, but I could be wrong about that. No, I take that back. That would have been Being John Malkovich. So
yes.
So Human Nature fell in between Being John Malkovich and adaptation. And then, Kaufman was on quite a run. When you take Malkovich, adaptation, Confessions of a Dangerous Mind, all pretty well-regarded movies, then coming into this. And then you've got Michel Gondry, who is a very, very well-known and accomplished music video director.
Some of the best, man. He's made some great music videos.
Kind of known for his visual style, known for his practical effects, known for sort of, doing fun things with forced perspective and stop motion and kind of these special effects that were from a bygone era that had kind of been disregarded as the rise of computer-generated effects had come into the fashion, right?
Yeah, and he brings some of that stuff to this film, too.
He most certainly does, and it's some of the moments that I love the most about this movie are those moments. So anyway, all this to be said, this is a really interesting combination of creative elements, right? And on paper, this is a movie that should be a surefire hit, I would think. And in many ways it is, but in many ways I think it doesn't quite live up to its creative talents. And these are some of the things we're going to deconstruct as we talk about this episode.
Yeah. So what do we have here? We start the movie with, I blew it because I don't have his name in front of me. Jim Carrey's character, Joel Barish. Joel Barish is waking up on, what appears to be a normal day for him.
It's Valentine's Day, 2004.
Yes, and he's getting ready to go to work. He goes outside and notices that his car is dinged up, makes kind of a mental note of it, starts to go to work, and then decides...
Well, he writes a note and leaves it on the car next to him, thinking that car dinged his.
Which is, impossible, really, from the looks of it. But
well, yeah, that other car is not hurt at all.
Right.
Yes,
he does. He has no memory of it happening, so obviously it happened last night, right? So he decides, instead of going to work, he's going to go to Montauk. And he takes the train out to Montauk, goes and sits in a cafe, right? And I don't know, he's writing in his journal for the first time in 2 years. He wonders kind of where the last 2 years have gone. And says, maybe I should go back to my old girlfriend. She was nice. I like nice. Setting up he's kind of a boring dude. it seems like, right?
Yeah,
Like the most exciting thing
he seems to be very in a rut. Would be probably the easiest way. He seems to have he probably has a very boring job. He can, he doesn't want to be there. It's cold, but he wants to go to a beach. And then, but in all the while before he goes to that, before he goes to the cafe, he goes to the beach, and he has seen this peculiar girl that's been they seem to be going to the same places. They seem to be, one seems to be following the other during different stages. And then they're in the cafe together. She's like, like over at another booth or table or whatever.
Yeah, and she acknowledges him, and he says something like, "Why do I fall in love with every girl that notices me?" Right? But he doesn't act on it. He's getting ready to leave, and he ends up on the same train landing, right, with this girl again, and she's kind of being playful with him, looking on each side of the wall there, the barrier, and he's like giving little giggles, but not knowing how to deal with the situation at all. But they end up on the same train, and she finally engages him, and she's very assertive, kind of kooky in this scene. Like, whoa, what's with this girl?
She seems to bounce around between being playful, being angry, and being maybe overstepping her boundaries and saying things that if Joel wasn't kind of kind of go with the flow type of guy, might be offended by him.
Yes, and she's very commanding of him. Like, yes. She's like, "My name is Clementine. No, don't make any jokes about it."
Right.
And she's invading his space almost. Well, not almost. She really kind of invades his space, and he's very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
With the situation, but he's like, "I'm trying to be nice." Nice. The word "nice" is very thematic in this film. It comes up a lot.
Yeah. Right, because she also is like, she kind of like rips him for that. It's like, "Oh, I'm trying to be nice." Well, why would you have to be nice? Thinking that he's got a hidden thing behind being whatever he said to be nice.
Right. And their interaction here is real weird, but we kind of find out later why it goes this way. But they end up, she keeps asking him, like, the next thing, "You want to come in for a drink?" And they have a blue wound. She makes him a blue wound. I didn't look up what that is, but
she stirs it with her fingers. I know that. That's weird. Yeah, I wouldn't do that in 2021.
Yeah, and she's very assertive. Like, she's going to take this dude to bed if he'll let her. But he's like, "No, I gotta go."
But like, she says, "Give me a call when you get home and wish me happy Valentine's Day." And so she says, "Give me a call, and when you call me, wish me a happy Valentine's Day," which is to say, basically, call me when you get home. And he does. And they immediately spend the next day together, where they go out to a frozen lake.
The cover scene from the movie is here.
Yeah,
go ahead.
And they seem to be already basically in love. They drive back, and she's like, "Well, I want to go to your place and sleep." They make it seem like they were on the frozen lake all night because it's daytime, and she's like, "Well, I want to go to your place. I want to sleep for a little bit."
Right.
While I assume he goes to work or whatever.
She's like, give me your, or let me go get my toothbrush. To which kooky Elijah Wood shows up and knocks on the window. And he's like, "Can I help you?" And he's like, "What?" He's like, "Can I help you?" And he's like, "I don't know what you're talking about." So Elijah's confused a little. And then we cut away, right? This is the last time.
And then we get and we see credits, and Jim Carrey
it's an 18-minute cold open.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah. It is, and it's an entire reel. I believe it actually was. I think I remember cutting this movie together in the projection booth, and I believe the credits were the start of reel 2. And I was like, "Well, this can't be right."
What did I mess up?
Put it
What did I
together.
mess up?
But anyway, yeah, he is driving, bawling his eyes out, seeming very distraught. And it's a very stark tonal shift from the very pleasant dates that he's been to being completely and totally destroyed.
Yeah, and I don't remember at the time, was this movie, was it sold with the idea that people's minds would be erased? Would we have known this going
Yes,
in?
but yeah, this will play into some stuff I have to talk about later. It was sold as a comedy with Mr. Blue Sky playing over credits. There was one trailer that was Tom Wilkinson explaining what Lacuna is and what it does, and then the other one felt like a rom-com with Mr. Blue Sky. But what we
That song could sell me anything.
Well, that song sold me. However, it I feel like kind of misrepresented the movie, but I understand it may have been the only way to sell this movie.
Yeah, it'd be an odd movie to market without giving away a lot of it.
Right. I think that's why they had to do the one version of the trailer, which is Tom Wilkinson in like an old school film strip talking about what Lacuna is. I think they had to sell it with that and with the romance and the bizarre romantic comedy element of it.
Right.
Look at all these kooky things that these two do, and whoa, she's sliding away on ice. What's that all about? But it's
why is he driving that bed?
Why is he teeny tiny under that table? Whatever.
Why is he taking a bath in a sink?
I could talk for hours about Babysitter Clementine. That was hot.
That scene is perfectly done. Like the way they shoot her legs and everything from a boy's perspective, like this is how a boy would fall in love with this babysitter. It was perfect, really. But we were jumping ahead a little bit here. So why is Carrie crying? Anyone want to field that one?
There was a breakup. So he goes to his friend's house, which is David Cross, who I think is perpetually stoned. Not just
I think
in
that's
this movie,
probably David
period.
Cross in real life. Yeah, exactly.
Period. And his wife, who also don't have a very good relationship. This movie does not like relationships too much. We should talk about that.
This movie is the psyche of Charlie Kaufman, pretty much.
So but he's explaining, it's like they had this fight. We don't see exactly what the fight was for a few minutes, I don't think, but basically she came home drunk at like 3 a.m. after a night of partying. She's always drinking, by the way. I don't think there's a scene in this movie where she isn't either smoking or drinking. And she is, they have a fight about the fact that she accuses him of saying, of thinking that she was out screwing around on him. And he says something which is pretty reprehensible to say, which is, you fuck people to get them to like you. Which is a very, very pointed statement that's said, and it's brought up a couple of more times. And so she leaves. She is also drunk driven and wrecked his car. Yeah, she's the reason why the front fender is fucked up. And he wants to drive her home because she's walking home in the middle of the night, and she doesn't want to do that. And so a couple of days later, to kind of try to make amends or whatever, he's going to take her a Valentine's Day gift, which is a necklace, which we learn more about later. It's almost impossible to talk about this movie in a linear fashion. Yeah. Because this is kind of like a sort of memento.
Or The Prestige. It was hard to talk about that movie too in a linear fashion.
Exactly.
That's interesting that you bring up Memento, though, because something I read about Kaufman was that he was worried that he wouldn't be able to finish this script because it would be too much like Memento.
Interesting.
I think,
and then also he didn't want to make it a thriller, and he was getting pressure to make the movie that he was writing more like Memento. He was like, well, that movie is already perfect. I'm trying to do something else, but it's also too similar, and I don't want to be a carbon copy of that movie.
You can have thriller and horror elements inserted into this movie. This movie is not that. Whoever was trying to get him to make that movie is fucking stupid.
They're trying to like tune up the thriller aspect.
They just wanted
the sci-fi aspect.
Give me more of that bullshit. Yeah,
right. It's typical studio note. Yeah.
Yeah, sure is.
Yeah.
Boy, oh boy, is it. So anyway,
same as all the studio notes I've gotten. They're always.
I know, right? God damn. I get studio notes all the time when I'm working on a B movie. And oh wait, no, it's me giving studio notes. Sorry. Anyway, so
he's at Cross's house, right?
He's at Cross's house, and he is distraught because he's going to go give her this gift, and she looks at him like she doesn't even know who he is. And then there's this other guy there that she's obviously hooked up with. And he's confused because it's like, it was just 2 days ago when we had this fight. What the hell? And you can tell that Cross wants to say something, wants to like actually like end this guy's misery and let him know what happened. Whereas his wife seems to want to
honor some liar's secret.
Well, she wants to let him wallow a little bit, let him let it out, basically. To which she gets accused for being kind of a mother figure to him, which also plays later into another memory of that he'll revisit. But this
is kind of a confusing moment though, because all right, well, go ahead. Finish
because I've got a note on this too. So he pulls out the side tables drawer and says, "All right, here, look at this." And his wife is like, "Oh my God, why are you doing this?" And it says on it, Clementine. I can't pronounce her last name. I think because she's
something Polish.
Has erased Joel Barish from her memory. Please do not remind her of their relationship. To which then he's like, "What? What?" Now, Jason, go ahead. You have.
Please do not remind her.
Right.
Of their relationship. Why would you not tell Joel immediately? And,
exactly.
And, why didn't Joel get a similar card?
Exactly, because that was one of my earliest notes, which was, how does this work exactly? Right. Because it's like, shouldn't Joel have been told? Because
it's a house of cards.
Right. Because this would create some really, really dangerous shit.
Yeah.
If you do this to the wrong person, now you've got a stalker. You've got an Elijah Wood, essentially, which could get very, very embarrassing or could get very, very dangerous.
It's the only way for this film to work, though, unfortunately. Like, you can't make this movie without that flaw. I don't know how you can. And it pissed. Stephanie didn't want to watch this one with me, but she walked into the room right before this sequence with Cross, and I'm trying to explain it to her. She's like, but she like got increasingly mad at the idea of the movie. She's like, well, how does that even work?
17 years ago.
Yeah. She got increasing. She's like, I don't even care. And
I admit enough to go with it, but it kind of just
it's the first crack. It's the first crack in this movie because that opening 18 minutes is very, very sweet and very it's very fantastical in the sense that this is what everybody wants.
Love at first sight.
The random person that you go and you just have that instant attraction to, right? And and it's more than just love at first sight. It's almost cosmic, right?
Right.
And it turns out that this person wants you just as much as you want them, right? All of that stuff. And then, okay, now we're going to get into the meat of what went wrong, right? But then this was the first crack for me. I'm not gonna go any further than that right now. We can save that for later. But so at this point, Joel is now he's kind of set on, it's almost also kind of a revenge movie too, right? Like, because he's almost now set on the path that, well, she did this to me. Now that I know what this thing is, I'm going to do it to her. Which is, I think there is an analogy there. The way that people break up, they tend to start hurting each other in similar ways like that.
You can't let it go.
You can't let it go. And then you try to get back at that person by doing, oh, my ex-girlfriend has a new boyfriend. Well, I'm going to go get a new girlfriend and I'm going to make sure she sees that. That's not cool to the other person.
Well, it takes that concept of the breakup where you get rid of all of their crap and you purge them from your life to just that existential level.
Exactly. So he goes, he finds out what lacuna is. He asks the doctor about it, and he's like, well, you weren't supposed to see this. And I'm like, why? But I'll let that go. And then he's like, okay, well, how do I get this? And of course it's Valentine's.
I like what he says before that. When he's been told what this is, he says, and it's one of my favorite quotes in the movie, there's no such thing as this.
That's funny. And then when the doctor says it's on par with a heavy night of drinking,
right.
I'm like,
it's
a little more than that.
But what he says before that, he's like, he asks, am I going to get brain damage from this?
It's like, well, technically this is brain damage.
He says, well, technically speaking, the procedure itself is brain damage.
And those things are pretty funny because those were things that were shown in the trailer too, as kind of the haha, isn't this a funny idea? But it's deeper than that. And I've got a lot to say about the deepness that I do really like about this movie. Jason's already heard a little bit about this from me. So basically, this is when we start getting into the memento of it all, because what they need to do is they need to erase his memories from the most recent to the earliest, because the earliest ones are the ones that are hardest to get away.
They're going to use all of his possessions and all the things that remind him of her. They're going to use that to create a map of Clementine in his brain.
Can I just say that I really want one of her little potato people?
I can make you one.
That's awesome. Can you?
Yeah.
I mean, I guess I could too, but it'd probably not turn out that great. Kind of go back to something that you brought up, Chuck, because Steph didn't want to watch this movie. Has she seen this movie before?
Well, my memory of this, and this is kind of funny because we both have different memories of it, is that we watched it on DVD at my apartment in 2005 or whatever. Okay. She has no recollection of it. I know that I watched it, and I'm pretty positive she was there. And she's like, I must have fallen asleep. But I think maybe she disliked it and had a procedure to have it removed from her.
Fair enough. I am curious if this movie is better liked typically by men as opposed to women. I was saying that I had watched, because we recorded this episode the same day after we recorded 12 Monkeys. I had talked about watching these movies for this, and that because we are actually recording this on Valentine's Day weekend, that was an accident.
It's kind of weird, right?
It's kind of weird, right? That was a total accident. I was like, yeah, that's all the Valentine's Day I needed. And the response I got was kind of made me think that didn't like that movie. And it makes me wonder if this is not a movie Jason, what does your wife think of this movie?
Susan liked it. She liked it quite a bit. Yeah.
Okay. I'm just curious if the typical split happens by way of gender on this movie, whether or not people like this movie or not.
I mean, I think it's a pretty well-regarded movie.
It is. I am well in the minority. I admit.
And I want to be clear that I like this movie. There's more about it that I like that I don't like. I don't think it was quite as perfect a movie as I had it in my mind from when I saw it last.
Those goddamn memories.
Yeah, they're tricky, right?
You do have to. We mentioned this, but you do have to make concessions to like this movie.
Well, I'm gonna use the quote. I'm gonna use the quote from last week here. The movie never changes. It can't change, but every time you see it, it seems different because you're different.
Yeah.
And that applies here.
Yeah, you're going to use it every week from now on.
Yep. I got a bad feeling we're going to talk about that during the chase scene during Point Break here at the end of this month. Anyway, that movie is fucking infallible. Anyway, I may have changed in the last 30 years. I don't know. We'll find out.
Yeah.
Anyway, so so he's got to gather up all of her stuff and take it to Lacuna. Now, by the way, this also is a world that exists in which days, I think, are like 72 hours long because they're going to do the procedure that day, and he's got 2 gigantic like trash bags of her stuff that they have to one at a time register his like impression of them. And then they go to his place, and then they're going to do the procedure overnight. And I feel like this is probably a longer term thing, but that's a minor. I am willing to concede this.
They had this to perfection at this point, Jeff. That
I guess
they could do it in 12 hours.
I mean, Mark Ruffalo is pretty good. Is pretty good at his job.
I think everyone is actually good in this. I know that's not what you meant necessarily.
No, everybody is. But Mark Ruffalo and Kirsten Dunst are the only people in this movie, or the only characters in this movie that I actually like.
Okay.
But that's
I agree with that.
And because they seem like the ones who are just the most real.
I also, to a degree, don't like Mark Ruffalo. I think Kirsten Dunst is the only actual character that I really like everything about.
Sure, fair enough. I feel like
but she does one of the most reprehensible things in this movie.
Does
honestly.
Yes,
she has sex with a married man.
Yeah.
Well,
she does.
Yes, but that was another lifetime at this point, right? We don't know that when
I know.
I can also say that I like her character. I don't necessarily have to like her character's character, if that makes sense.
Yes.
Right? She feels genuinely real as a person.
I like her, and she's darn cute in this movie too.
Oh my god, dancing around in her undies is I could watch that. Can I watch that movie? Just that for like an hour.
Dunst on a bed.
Yeah.
Eternal Dunst on a bed.
Yeah, exactly.
That's what it'd be called.
Yeah.
Gorgeous.
No, because it was fun. You know, it's like it was something that felt real. And that's going to be something I'm going to come back to later when I get to how I feel about this movie, while still being able to say I absolutely positively love the concept at the heart of this movie. Yes. The movie doesn't do it for me, but I also understand I am just one of 3 opinions about this movie that the other 2 are more positive than mine, and I'm fine with that. And I understand why you guys like this movie. I wish I liked this movie more.
We're already past it where he goes to the bookstore, right? And she doesn't remember him.
Yep.
Right.
Can I just talk about how great that shot is, where he's walking out of the bookstore, the lights are turning off row by row behind him, and he walks into David Cross and his wife's apartment.
Yeah,
like that's all practical effect and set work, right? They just built that set outside of that doorway, but it looks so seamlessly cool.
Oh, there wasn't a cut there, was there?
No.
I didn't even realize that when it happened.
I think, and what's great about that shot is that it sets us up for what it's going to be like being inside of his head later.
Yeah,
Right.
most definitely.
And that's good that it's like, okay, we've seen that before, so now we can understand what's going on here.
Yep.
We also find out when he's about to get his memory erased at his apartment that Elijah Wood's character is a part of that process. So the weird guy that knocked on his window at the beginning of the movie is one of the mind eraser people.
I don't want him to ever.
Isn't that what that's what they call them, right? This is Clementine says we gotta escape the mind eraser people.
I think she does say that actually.
I don't ever want Elijah Wood to put anything on my head ever. After this movie, it's like, even in real life, it's like, get that fucking hat away from me. I don't want that thing on my head.
How many times has he tried, though?
Never.
Jeff is counting on his fingers. It's never happened.
It's never happened, Jeff. But I don't want it to happen.
I will not allow it. But I kind of like this part of the film where they're kind of setting up how the mapping works, and Mark Ruffalo has his computer and you see all the stuff there. It's just cool looking, I thought.
Well, there is a very cool kind of retro sci-fi feel to that, right? I mean, like, you're wearing big old helmets that look like it's part of it is like a colander, it's got like beep beep boop beep boop, on it and whatever. And it's as simple as looking at a map of his brain and seeing green dots and basically playing Space Invaders at that point.
Yes.
Where you're just wiping out the green dots. And there's something very, very simple and very charming about that. Again, there's so many concepts that I like in this movie, and that's one of those. And it's such a small thing. But yeah, I agree with you, Chuck, on that. So, well, Chuck, take us from here. Take us from here. I'm going to
rely on you for the linear narrative here.
No, I was going to pass the baton at some point. I might as well now.
Yeah. So at this point, we start to see the memories as they're getting erased, right? Starting with the end of the relationship, basically, which is a scene you already described where she comes home drunk, etc. And he is aware that it's happening because somehow the scene is so hard to describe, is in the memory. The memory of the doctor is responding to him as he's talking to him. So it's kind of off-putting. I'm like, wait a minute, what is going on here? But he's got to remove the part where he initiated this whole thing has to be erased from his memory, right? Mm-hmm. Which is a little weird because he remembers that happened the rest of the movie, even though the memory's been erased. Well, that is one problem I had with this movie.
That's fair. And I mean, I guess you could say he created new... He
created his own memories.
He created his own pathways of remembering.
And the memories are degrading. The memories are degrading. They're not being zapped all at once necessarily.
No, right, but I think they are getting hit one at a time because they say, I got that one. So you assume it's gone instead of degrading.
I think that the overall sense of the memory, though, is still dependent on other pieces. It's not really all gone.
Right.
No one piece is gone completely till they're all gone. Right. I think the point I'm trying to make.
I think something.
I also think that there's something about the way that it's zapping some of the unpleasant memories as to why he's starting to respond in a way that he wants to keep them from being taken. Because he starts having the degradation is moving into an area where he's now starting to only remember what he liked about his relationship. The
core memory that they're trying to get to is in danger now.
Yeah, and I think that does play.
But that's that's kind of a dangerous sentiment to me.
Right. Well, that's going to touch upon what my main note is about this movie. What I like about it and where it gets a little wonky for me. But I think that's where I think, Jason, we're kind of on the same. I think we're on the same highway there.
I think we are too.
But we'll get there. We'll get there.
Yeah, and I'm having trouble remembering what happens in what order, but I think at this point we see him going after her on the street after she's left, and he kind of gets in a loop where his car keeps appearing
It's
at one end of the street.
Yeah. And it's like mirror images. Yeah.
Yeah. And at this point, internally, I don't know yet if he wants to save her, like the memory of her, if he's decided at this point yet, but he's starting to get that idea, right? That what I've decided to do here is not really what I want.
Right.
And then there are good reasons for that. I think, Jason, you touched upon this, as the bad memories are getting erased or degrading, his fondness for her is growing because it's the things he can remember most about her are the things that he liked. Right. So,
well, and also
exactly
if we're talking about a progression of a relationship starting off great and everything is fine and everything is sunny and great and happy, well, at the end of
Eternal
it,
sunshine,
obviously, right? Yeah, exactly. It's the opposite, obviously, at the end. So as you are traveling backwards, you are starting to see good things. Now, there are bad things that every now and then interject. Like there's the
conversation about having a baby. Sorry,
talking about having a baby, the sameness of every night eating at Chang's,
The Dining Dead.
The dining. I love that line. I love that line.
You know, so like you're seeing some of these things kind of where you're starting to see the rough seas start, but and God, this is almost impossible.
Well, he starts to sort of mock her too, and she talks about hair on the soap, and he finishes her sentence when she says it's revolting.
Yeah. Right. Well, and some of that is just him reliving those memories.
Right.
Also.
Yeah. It's 100% him reliving them. Yeah.
Yeah. He didn't say it in the moment. That's one of the hard things about. No, I'm not explaining it to you. I'm just saying it's one of the hard things about this movie is separating what actually happened versus how he's reconstructing and interacting with it.
That is exactly right. And that leads to where I have my biggest problem with her and the characters, our lead characters in particular. But again, you know, it's like that's there are so many things because there are also a lot of jumbled memories too, right? Like misremembering the order in which things happen too could happen. Like he eventually gets to the point where, you know, it's like he wants to try to save one thing about her, you know, and so I think she's the one who comes up with the idea of why don't you take me someplace where they don't know about. Basically off the grid at that point. Yeah. So that's when he takes her back to his childhood, where there's like a rainstorm and just playing out in the rain, singing row,
rain. Oh, row your boat. Yeah.
And he then like that, it's hard to remember the order of these things because it gets disjointed at this point, which is on purpose because that memory gets erased, and so he has to find her from another time, but he has now quote unquote infected the memory of her so that she knows what he's wanting to do, and that's when he goes back to being a little kid and she's the babysitter.
Yeah, the idea there is she says the eraser people are coming, the racer guys are coming, take me somewhere they wouldn't think to look for me. So somewhere in his memory where she doesn't exist, which would mean his childhood.
Right. And so like and he had a picture of her as a little kid, so he knows basically what she looked like or can place her in that memory or can swap her out with her baby, with his babysitter or whatever. It's in that part where we also learn more about some of his damage. That he feels like nobody pays attention to him, that he's invisible, or, you know, nobody defers to him for anything, or and he's really kind of a lonely guy. I don't know if that is I feel like that was meant to be, this is really an issue that he has, that he was trying to solve with this very kind of wild and crazy person, which obviously is really only going to work for so long because they're going.
She brought excitement into his life, right?
She brings excitement, but that eventually is going to go away, and then she's going to be resentful for that going away, or at least he thinks that she's going to be resentful. This is where things get really muddy, but.
This is where where it's kind of that deconstruction of the what's it called again, Jeff?
The manic pixie
dream girl, right? Because she isn't there to save him. She isn't there to fill the holes in his life.
She doesn't want to, and she didn't want him to save her.
Yeah, in fact, she even says, too many guys think I'm a concept, or I complete them, or I'm going to make them alive. Right. But I'm just a fucked up girl who's looking for my own peace of mind. Don't assign me yours. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. So she's got her own issues, and he is assigning these things to her now.
Yeah.
Because it's his memory, and he is, he's kind of, you can tell this is very much a writer's movie because he's creating a character within the character of this girl.
Right.
And so eventually they start getting to like some really, really nice memories. The memories of, going to this lake or river in Boston that she likes going to when they first met. And that last memory is really, really nice. And that's where I wish the whole movie existed.
Before we get to that, though, I'm with you. We should mention the other narrative that's going on outside of the erasure.
Yeah.
Because
there's like two or three movies going on here.
Yeah, I love that Elijah Wood is basically his own Cyrano de Bergerac.
Nice pronunciation there. You nailed it. Cyrano de Bergerac.
What? I didn't say de Bergerac. Cyrano de Bergerac. Cyrano.
But yeah,
I'm sorry, I can't do my R's and L's like you, Chuck.
You can't trill.
I can't give it that froggy flair.
Oh, see, now I have to apologize to the Italians last week. Jason, I think you need to apologize to the Frenchies.
The froggies, Frenchies.
My dog is pissed off at you right now, I'll tell you that much.
I bet he's adorable when he's pissed off.
Yes, he is. Actually, it's hilarious.
He probably farts in your general direction.
Yes, he scoffs. Yes, he does. Tells me my mother smelled like hamster. But yeah, so like you had said, Elijah Wood's character leaves the place that they're at because he's now dating Clementine, or Tangerine, as you'd call her.
God, that fucking kills me.
Yeah,
that kills me. He has no. What's the word?
Boundaries?
No, not boundaries. He doesn't know the context for why Joel calls Clementine Tangerine. He just knows that he did. So he calls her Tangerine out of the proper context because he thinks that's a pet name she likes, and it fucking kills me.
It is great. It is great. And he has taken all of the things that were meant to be thrown away that were Joel's, and he's using that to try to reconstruct the relationship. He also stole her panties.
Yes, he did.
But just her clean ones.
Yeah,
but Mark Ruffalo was like, dude. And then they laugh.
Yeah.
That was funny. The way he's like, he's appalled by it, but then he's like, yeah, go get her, girl. Go get her.
Mark Ruffalo also tells Elijah Wood that he's got to focus while he pops a beer.
Yeah. But they also had called, I forget her character's name.
Mary Spivo.
Thank you, Mary. Yeah. They call Mary over. She was the receptionist, I think, at the Hakuna Matata place.
No more worries.
for the rest of your life.
That's true.
And you've been listening to Film Seizure.
The Bergner.
The Bergner. But yeah, so she comes over and she apparently is having a fling with Mark Ruffalo's character. She's real sweet and cute. Like, I think I like her character the best in this movie.
She is just the lovable, the smiling face at the front desk when you walk into Don't Worry, Be Happy Incorporated.
Right. Love it.
She's not the brightest bulb, right? She's not the sharpest tool.
She seems to
No, she pulls her quotes from Bartlett's instead of reading like good literature. She's just like, give me the good stuff that I can impress people with.
Right, exactly. She's a little pathetic in that way, but she's so genuinely real, and
she doesn't mean to hurt anyone.
She doesn't have bad intentions. Right, exactly.
Yeah, so from here, they get a little drunk, right? And they do their bed dance thing, and
they're also very, very stoned.
Yes, they get super stoned, and eventually Ruffalo realizes that he's gone off the map.
Right.
He's not there anymore, and panic. They have to call the doctor.
They have to call, right. Which Tom Wilkinson is the only doctor. The others are just technicians and like the receptionist, and it's like I feel like everybody should be a doctor.
Yeah, you probably shouldn't be performing this kind of brain damage unless you've had 8 years of school.
Right, preferably. Yeah. So then,
and you probably shouldn't get drunk and stoned. Sorry, go ahead.
Right, exactly. So that's happening. So this is when also a couple of times Joel has opened his eyes when he should be asleep. Right. They give him something to basically knock him out for however long they need him to be out. So that the idea is he wakes up after the procedure is done. He may have some vague dreamlike memory of something, but then much like with anybody, when you can't hold on to a dream, it's gone. It's going to be gone within a few minutes of waking up. So they start to realize that his personality or his emotion is starting to kind of plow through this mental programming that's meant to erase these things. And then they are going to, they need to basically, at this point, it's basically, they have to hunt down this rogue memory this rogue internalized memory of Clementine, to basically zap it. And they're successful for a time. It's like also, guys, there's one memory here in which this couple, Jim Carrey and Kate Winslet, are playing like they are killing each other with a pillow.
Yes.
That's
it's very weird.
It's very weird.
And you're introduced to it when he's doing it to her as a kid.
Yes.
As a kid, yeah.
Yes, and the mom looks out the window and they're like, "We're just playing. We're just playing.
Where everything's fine."
I'm wondering what that represents. But go ahead.
One of them is obviously smothering the other. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah.
I do like when they're when they're both little kids. Of course, they're just themselves as little kids when you see them like from the face. But there's one little throwaway. It seems like it's probably it has to be an ADR line.
Oh, the ADR killed me in that scene.
When what is it that she says? Something like, "Do you like my hat?" And it's just like thrown out there like this very non sequitur, just while they're throwing like mud at each other. So I was like, "Do you like my hat?" That's a bizarre line that it stands out so much when I heard it. It's like, what? It's like, what? So yeah, I mean, eventually they're able to find Clementine and Joel through each of these times that they tried to escape. And we're now left with the final memory, which is the first night that they met. And it's at this beach party. And she is not at all what you think she is. She's not very overbearing at first. She is as fascinated in him as he is of her, because he's kind of he doesn't know many people at the party. He's obviously having some relationship problems with somebody that he lives with, because he's just she wasn't there with him. And he just kind of seems like he just kind of wants to be left alone, and she kind of comes over to him, and it kind of...
He's like, you're normal. You're normal. You don't know how to interact in these situations either.
Right.
Which means we're kindred spirits. At least.
Exactly. And this is probably, one of the best scenes, because it's just really nice. You're kind of just watching two people get to know each other. Now, right. She immediately wants to do some breaking and entering in that fucking house over there.
That's a
red flag.
A red flag. Thank you.
He noticed too. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, he said two things that resonate on both sides of the equation here. He said when she took the chicken from his plate, he was kind of like, whoa, boundaries. But then he was like, it was so intimate, like we were already lovers, right?
Right.
And then when they break in, he's like, I thought you were a nut, but you were exciting.
Right. And and it's like she just represented something that he didn't have. And I'm guessing that person that he was with,
Naomi.
Was it Naomi? Yeah. Was probably, I mean, she was
nice.
It was nice, but it was probably stale at that point in time, much like what we saw earlier with the whole stale routine of always eating at the same place. And, what we do find out later, because everybody makes a tape of what they like to kind of...
Their reasons for expunging.
And I think it kind of helps them ramp up their emotions so that they can more easily find all of it. But he talks about how, like, he can't talk to her about some of the things that he's interested in, because she's, she pronounces library, which is embarrassing to him. And he, all of these different things that kind of, you get the impression that he has probably exceptionally high standards, to the point where probably nobody for very long will survive his standards.
Right.
That is one of the few instances that you actually see some of his damage. But when this is, when that last memory of her is starting to fade, she whispers to him, "Meet me in Montauk," which is what we saw at the beginning of the movie. So it kind of becomes this full circle.
Right. And on the outside.
Yeah, that's exactly where I was going. Meanwhile,
Dr. Mind Eraser person.
Dr. Wilkinson.
God damn, that name's hard to pronounce. Muirzwak. He, by the way, my brain completely shut down there for about 5 minutes. I don't know if you saw, like, if I move my earphones, smoke will roll out. But anyway, he has gotten full control over it. He's able to find them every time and wipe her out, basically. And while he's kind of in charge, Mark Ruffalo is like, "Hey man, I'm going outside for a smoke." Whatevs. And so he goes outside, and while he's outside, Mary is telling Dr. Mind Eraser, "That sounds like a really fucking cool, like, G.I. Joe bad guy."
Yeah.
Anyway, he's out, she's telling him all these cool quotes that she read out of Bartlett's, which anybody who doesn't know what Bartlett's is, it was basically the type of book like the Guinness Book of World Records that you find like in a bar. It's like, and then you regale people with these fucking.
I wonder if they still make that.
I'm sure they do. I bet there's a website now.
There's got to be an online version, yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, it's one of those things where, I need a really cool quote for something, and Bartlett's would provide you with something, and they would categorize everything. I remember
They'd categorize it. Yep.
Yeah, I remember we used to have several volumes of that in the high school library.
Yeah.
But
The old library.
Yeah, the good old library. So Mary starts kissing Dr. Mind Eraser. And she's like, I've loved you from the beginning, and he's like, no, we can't do this, and blah, 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 blah. Well, outside, not only does Mark Ruffalo sees what's going on. Of course, he was, it's implied that they fucked on top of Joel's body.
Yeah.
At some point in the night. He sees what's going on, and then he sees that Mrs. Mind Eraser shows up, and so he starts honking the horn like as the lookout dude. It seems
Good
legit.
guy. He's a good guy.
That's weird.
Yeah, I mean he's fresh out of college probably. It's like this is what you do when the girlfriend comes over and you're messing around with one of the cheerleaders or whatever.
I'm surprised he didn't.
I've been the honker before, guys.
Yeah.
So anyway, she sees this and is like, oh shit, and he's like, hey, I tried, and she's like, I was the one who was throwing myself at him. He didn't want it. And she's like, and the wife reveals what?
Yeah, she says, why don't you tell her instead of torturing the poor girl? Something like that.
Yeah.
Because he had said this is a one-time thing.
Right.
And she's like, what? So then we find out that Mary's mind had been erased in the past because they did have a fling.
Yeah. Why would she work still at I mean, that seems to ruin the purpose of the cards. Yeah.
Yeah. Don't ever mention this guy who you work with again.
Who's your boss? Who you want to have sex with?
Does she type out her home card? Does she type out
probably.
her home? Okay.
But then they had to get rid of all the cards. They had to get rid of all the cards because
but it's also why it didn't work, right? Because she was still in the environment, and she's going to fall back into what she, her desires for him. And
if I'm Tom Wilkinson, I'm like, this is cool. We can do this. We can go around this merry-go-round every now and then.
My guess is that Tom Wilkinson expected that and did try to rebuff her, right? But
could you rebuff her like fully? Could you? It'd be awful hard.
Only a stronger man than me. Yeah.
Yeah.
And meanwhile,
I'd be like, let's recreate Spider-Man.
You'd be hanging upside down from your window.
Yeah, I'd be wearing the wet dress.
Yeah.
It's like, wait a minute, this isn't right. Let's erase my brain and let's try it again.
But while this is going on, Clementine, because Elijah Wood's character is using all of the items that would have reminded, I'll just say Jim Carrey, Joe Barish, that would have reminded Joe Barish of Clementine, actually starts to remind her and fracture that erasure. It kind of puts her in a tizzy because she doesn't know
how to feel. She can't reconcile.
She knows that it's weird.
Yeah.
But she doesn't know why it's weird.
Because at one point in time,
she's crazy.
She's telling him, it's like, my skin's crawling. I don't feel right. I don't feel like, I can't sleep. I can't think. I can't, and it's because he's basically looking in a trash bag and pulling out something and saying, hey, Tangerine, or whatever,
I've never been this happy in my whole entire life. Like stuff that was erased from her but still resonates. Right. Like you couldn't fully clean out the feeling of it. Just the memory of it is gone.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. So the other thing, Mary decides she's quitting. That's probably a good idea.
Should have done that the first time.
Maybe.
Probably.
Probably. Yeah. Very, very much should. So she goes and finds her tape, listens to what she was, recording to the very guy that she's in love with that's getting erased.
Awkward.
And
Oh,
he's also like she's expressing reservations, and he's saying, "Well,
he's
this is what we agreed would be best." It's almost
it's
like
like
he's pressuring her into the abortion, you know?
well,
Yeah,
it's a
yeah.
little bit of mind rape, really.
Uh-huh.
Because he's the one who's coaxing her. But yeah, I mean, there's all sorts of analogs you can play there. But so so she decides, I'm going to pack up my stuff, but I'm also because hours are 3 times as long in this world. I'm going to pack up everybody's tapes. And I'm going to mail them out to everybody so that they are all reminded of the things that they had erased. Which now brings us back again full circle to Joel. By the way, every time she called him Jolie, all I could ever think of was Mystery Science Theater
Jolie.
3000, because that's what Dr. Forrester would call Joel sometimes. It was kind of like when he was like being kind of condescending or whatever. Anyway, or just kind of playfully joking with him. But anyway, so he's dropping her off so she can get her toothbrush. And that's when Elijah Wood is there. And when she comes back, she has picked up the tape, and so she sees this tape, reads this note, and it's like, well, that's a weird note because it's kind of it's a well-written note. You know, it's like, this is, you've known me, but you don't remember me. And it's Mary basically telling everybody, hey, you've had a thing done. And she puts the tape into the tape player in the car. And now she's hearing with Joel in the car, she's hearing why she's dumping him. And he's like,
Are you screwing with me?
yeah, he's understandably confused and pissed.
Uh-huh.
He tells her to get, beat cheeks, get out of here. And but then when he gets home, he has a tape too. And so she goes over to Joel's place to try to reconcile or to talk to him or whatever. Of course, he's in the background while they're talking are all the things that he hates about her, which is also very awkward.
Yeah.
But they decide that they are going to, let's give it another shot. I mean, they know what irritates the other person, I guess. Surely,
Yeah, there's something.
End well.
There's something kind of uncomfortable and beautiful about the idea of just laying it all out there for your partner.
Yeah, this is why I never pick the superpower of reading minds. I don't want to read other people's minds. I just want to be able to run real fast.
But this is like, it's like their relationship has, that they don't remember having it, but everything about each other that annoys one another has been laid bare, right? And there's still sort of in this bliss of this new relationship that they don't care. And maybe it will work this time because they are going into it with eyes wide open, right?
Well, there's
or maybe everything will.
If I knew what I know today back then, could I have changed what I mean, there is that possibility that's opened up as well.
But also it's kind of like, what are these things that drive them crazy about one another? And some of these things are kind of shallow and they're just a little bit unrealistic. You're always going to have things that drive you crazy about
that's what I think. There's like a failing in this movie, in that they couldn't have made the thing so horrible that you can't buy that they would get back together. Like if there was infidelity or something really major, the end of this movie would have fell completely flat, because you'd be like, no one would ever forgive that. How could you forgive that? But it makes their relationship, like you said, the mundane things that happen in every relationship aren't cause for breaking up. Everyone in a relationship deals with those things.
But some things are pretty serious, like her drinking problem, her wrecking his car.
Well, okay, so yeah, that's going to get that's
a lot of the things that he found exciting. He's coming around to the fact that they're dangerous.
Yeah.
and they're unhealthy.
Yeah. So one thing that some people have asked about her character is they wonder if Kaufman specifically wrote her this way to be a borderline personality disorder, or probably with a touch of narcissism
I
to
could see
boot.
that.
He's never copped to it, but obviously he wrote the character as he wrote the character. But yes, she does things that are nihilistic. She does things that will, unless she actually wants to do something about it, is going to ruin her life time and time again, which will then cause her to double down and triple down and quadruple down on being impulsive and going to Lacuna the day after a bad argument to have the guy erased from her brain, which then, of course, almost again, where I said, some of these things can really put somebody in a very dangerous situation, because now that put her into contact with the Elijah Wood character, where he is now torturing her with these memories that she has lost, by making her feel something again that she doesn't want to. Now, I do think Joel, on the other hand, probably also has probably narcissism in his character. He cannot stand when somebody deviates from a path that he wants them to be on. And that maybe isn't narcissism, maybe it's something else, but it would make sense if he is kind of the voice of Charlie Kaufman, because it is written through, like I said, this is a very writer's movie, because he's now creating a new character for Clementine in his own memories.
Well, he does want the manic pixie dream girl. That's exactly what he wants. But the problem with the manic pixie dream girl is that she's a real person,
right?
And when she stops filling all of the existential holes you have about yourself, and you've gone I guess numb to their effects, you're looking for the next one, right? And that's what Joel is, and he's kind of infuriating.
Yeah. So right, and what I was thinking about this last night and today. What I think would have been really, really cool is if they made 2 movies, and the other one would be from Clementine's perspective. Mm-hmm. To see, because this is told so much in Joel's perspective that while you hear him say things like she's an idiot because she says library, not library. I can't talk to her about the books that I want to read. Oh, big fucking deal. Whatever. You hear him say that, but you only ever see her act out poorly. I would like to see what her perspective is, to see him be almost insufferable, because I'm sure he probably was. Because all she says is, I can't stand the person I'm becoming. Yeah. And I want to see from her perspective what person she was.
Or I think the problem,
or what doesn't she stand about what she's becoming, because she needs to become something else, because she's self-destructive.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Well,
I think probably if they made that other movie, it'd be way too boring. Because Joel, well, hear me out. Joel is like tempering her to a place that she doesn't want to be. She wants to be fun. She wants to go out. She wants to do things. And Joel's like happy to sit there and read his books. So it would have been too mundane. Like the reasons for her to get worn out on him is that he's too boring.
Well,
and that wouldn't have been fun to watch.
But what you could see, but one thing you could see is you could see her where she's been damaged.
I picked that up though from the movie itself.
But we're picking up one side of the story. That's
you're still getting it from Joel's perspective,
right?
I get that, but I think it's a little bit honest in it. I know we're getting Joel's version. I know he's able to change the narrative, but he doesn't make himself guilt-free, or he doesn't really like soften what he did. I don't think.
No, but I do think that we are led down a path to be sympathetic to him because she's drunk. She wrecks his car. She wants to have kids, but he thinks she's not capable,
going to be a good mother.
And we've seen what he sees are the reprehensible sides of her, the drinking, the breaking and entering, and the stuff like that.
But saying she's not a good mother, I mean, that's reason, or wouldn't be a good mother, is reason enough for her to have some kind of disdain for him, you know?
Well, sure. But however, you know, and this kind of ties to what, Jason, what you're saying, that, you know, what is it that she feels like she should be because what she is needs to change? Well, she probably can't see that because she is, you know, she's borderline personality disorder. You know, so she's not going to be able to see, and again, probably a little bit of narcissism in there too, but she can't, like, yeah, I don't know. It's just,
she doesn't feel like a complete character because her positive traits are only positive in so much that they fulfill something in Joel, right?
Right.
They're not. She's never shown to really be. You know, what motivates Clementine? What makes her tick? What does she even see in Joel? Right. That really is it a desire for normalcy? Is it a desire for someone who can help ground her, and that's what she ultimately rejects? You don't know. You can infer a lot of things, but
right.
but you're just, it's so, she's painted into a corner in this movie, and while yes, it is in some ways a destruction of the manic pixie dream girl, she's still not given enough room to breathe and be her own self that you understand where she's coming from at any point.
Right, because you're only given, another failing here, like 12 minutes with the actual characters, right? You only see Clementine and Joel for a very short period of time as they are.
Yeah.
Right? Everything else is a memory, and then, you know, we meet Clementine. She's manic because her whole world doesn't make sense because she's being fucked with by Elijah Wood. So we get no real read on her at all, what she would have been like prior to meeting Joel.
And I think that's where I'm with Jeff, where I want to see that second movie.
Yeah,
I feel like there's a whole thing missing, right?
Yeah, and it's I just think that it's, you know, which path do you want to take? You know, it's like choose your own adventure almost. That would even be an even cooler movie where
there actually was a movie that was kind of made like that, where they did two movies, and it was one from the female point of view, one from the male point of view of like a relationship and a breakup. Yeah. I forget what it was, but it's interesting. I would have liked that.
You know, but regardless, it feels as though it's but I mean, yeah, I don't know. It's just, I also have the question of, because what we see at the end is they're running along the snowy beach where they met, right, originally. And it repeats a few times, which makes me ask, much like I did last week with 12 Monkeys, does it work out? Or if it repeating reveals that they have tried to erase each other again and again, but they can't stop remembering one another, which is a fascinating concept on a metaphysical level. Also, the metaphysical level of this movie is something that I do very, very much like. The concept of, you know, as a person who is very sentimental about a lot of things and have nostalgia and fascinated with the idea of memories, it's an interesting study into that very concept almost. But I see the attempt and I see what they're doing and I love the concept. The thing is about memories are that your memories are false almost always. The moment you do a thing, you assign, in a lot of times, not everything that you do, but in a lot of ways that you assign an emotion to that memory, which begins to taint and change that memory.
Sure.
Both of you having married and been married, you guys will remember those days those wedding days different than your wives do.
Yeah, I was just going to say that the fascinating thing I find about memory is that there's a thing that happened and a lot of different people perceive it and participate in it, but all take away a different version of what happened.
Exactly. And you personalize it. When you're mugged, you can say, I feel like I was going to die that day. When you're the person who was walking across the street and saw the mugging, you have a different, you're saying, wow, that was the craziest thing I ever saw that day. And it's a story that you tell to somebody, right? In a different context. And it's, but you're all participating in the same mugging or whatever. Even more personally than that, it's like,
who's the asshole that watches a mugging and then doesn't do anything about it?
I know. Most of the world. I mean, we're talking about Kitty Genovese now.
Right.
But anyway, we're. But like, I mean, there are a lot of days that I don't have a whole lot of memory of that are part of a time that I have a lot of feeling for. Like there are certain things about high school. I don't remember the day-to-day high school. I don't remember every single teacher I had, every single person I sat next to or whatever. But there are certain things that I remember based on the feeling that I have, which is going to be almost dreamlike. It's not going to be anything like it really was. And so that concept is here, and that makes for a really, really, really fascinating concept.
But don't you wish they got a little bit more into that idea where you're seeing these memories from both perspectives or from multiple perspectives, and they don't go there.
Right. And what you see is ultimately somebody who is holding on to something that he has, by nature, he has twisted that thing. When it's a bad memory and she comes home drunk, he's hurt and he has irritation about that, and he has frustrated, and he's become the victim. When it's the first time they met, he's caught up in the emotion of finding that new thing and that brand new person that may bring him out of his doldrums for a little while.
And that's what I kind of like about this movie, is the fact that the memories are erased in that succession to where he falls back in love. That's the concept that I like about it. And I don't know if you can go into the relationship a second time knowing all the pitfalls and still avoid them. Yeah. It's probably not likely, but they may have a better shot, because most relationships, you have what you want to call it, the honeymoon period, where people are still kind of hiding bits of themselves from each other. You haven't
they're still closing the door when they take a leak or something.
Yeah, you haven't fully come out yet. To whatever term you use there, but they've fully come out now, and they maybe don't have enough. Nobody has enough time to process anything in this movie. It's the problem with it being a 72-hour film, or you know what I mean? Like it, it takes place in such a little amount of time, they can't process stuff. But making that decision at that point, knowing what they each know what annoyed them about each other, and vice versa, right?
Yeah.
So maybe they have a shot.
That's what I love about the movie, is that optimism, and pointing that out, that their lives have been made bare to one another, and it is all out on the table now, and they can hopefully use that as a foundation to be stronger with one another.
And maybe they talk about some things.
And honestly, talk about these things and help each other through some of these things, because they can see their faults now as they appear to others.
Yeah,
right?
They're coming together knowing the faults instead of drifting apart, not knowing what each other is annoyed
honestly,
about.
She's going to need a lot of help, because, man, I mean, like you said, she could have killed somebody.
Yeah,
She's
or herself.
She's out of control.
Right. And
Um,
also, but then you could also argue there is a possibility that the reason why she was so fucked up that night is because she was upset about something that Joel had done
right,
earlier in
totally.
the day. So,
Oh yeah,
you
she
know,
was lashing out. She was certainly lashing
exactly.
out
So
in a
it's
way.
like,
Yes.
yeah, because the simple truth is we don't exactly know how much she drinks outside
Right.
of what Joel tells us she drinks.
Right.
You
And
know,
we also
inviting him
don't
up
know.
to have a drink that in those first 18 minutes, that could just be, let's loosen this guy up. Let's get him to talk about who he is, because he wasn't talking that much or he wasn't saying anything. You know, but that doesn't necessarily indicate that she's an alcoholic.
I totally agree, and and when you think about the fact that it's the honeymoon period, it's when she's exciting, it's when she's impulsive, when he is most drawn to her, and you get the sense that in their relationships she's had to become more wildly outlandish in order to draw him in, to get what she needs from him,
Yeah.
and nothing is working anymore, and that's where the relationship starts to die. Um, so they're both in a way like vampires.
Emotional vampires. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think that's, I mean, and also, again, it could just be, um, again, we also, I mean, memory is going to be an unreliable narrator at times. And maybe Joel is an unreliable narrator, which could add an interesting layer. I don't think
Mm-hmm.
that's how this movie was written, though. I think, and you know, I mean, that's why I wonder how the general female audience versus a general male audience would accept this movie, independent of, you know, date night, or independent, you know, just watching it on your own, separate it out. Do you, I'm curious how people, from different points of view of that takes that. Cause, you know, I mean, I don't know. It's just, it's a very interesting concept. It's a concept that I think could be done again and again and again and again. You know, and it could make for some very, very interesting movies, and it could make for a really, really cool movie if somebody ever did do a both sides type of thing.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think honestly, coming out of the movie, Joel looks like the worst person.
And maybe
I
he
don't
is.
think less of Clementine. Like, just to touch on that narrative that we don't see a lot of what she's done or feels, makes him look like the worst person to me.
Yeah, maybe
because I know what he thought. I know the shitty things he said.
True.
I know, you know what I mean?
Yeah, but maybe he was overbearing, and maybe he was trying to, you know, put a square peg into a round hole. I mean, maybe he was wanting things from her that she couldn't be.
Right.
But I need to see that also to fully feel confident without superimposing my own perspective or my own point of view on that.
It's interesting though, because there are so many stories that are written from the narrator's perspective that we don't have this feeling of, like, I need to know what the other people were thinking. Like,
Right.
Why is it that this movie elicits that response when so many others use the same tools?
Probably because I've been in those relationships. I don't know.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, there's a reason why I'm really attracted to Clementine.
Not surprised.
I just think that a movie that relies so heavily on the theme of memory and recollection, that it would behoove a film of that nature to give us the whole picture.
That's fair.
Yeah. You know, when I first saw this movie, I will admit that, like, when I saw this movie 17 years ago, I really didn't like it. And it was because I didn't like the lead characters. I felt like you're doing nothing for me to like Clementine, but you're also giving me this character that I don't really want to be around either, and Joel. This was also during a weird state. The first few years of the 2000s are some of my least favorite years in movies. I think a lot of pretension was there, and I think I maybe unfairly clumped this into that. I don't know if either of you guys ever heard me go back 15 years ago, go on the rant about Art School Confidential.
Oh,
Hated that movie.
Yeah.
Shannon was there. Poor guy had to deal with me like just halfway through the movie. He's like, fuck this movie. Anyway, but it was a lot of these types of, let's do these really cool new 2000s relationship type of movies. And it's like, these people are insufferable. I will admit that seeing it now, I have a greater appreciation for the things I wish the movie had in it. While I still can say the movie at its core and in the heart of the movie is incredibly fascinating and something that I could understand why people like. At the end, it's okay. It's like, I understand why people like it. It's just not for me.
Cool. Any final thoughts, Chuck?
No, I think we've pretty much dragged it all out into the sun with this one. I like it. I still like it. I get the problems with it. I can take the opposing viewpoints and see the merit for sure in that. But sometimes, I mean, this movie does want you to think. It does try to get you to think.
Absolutely.
But sometimes I'm just like, I don't want to think about it. I just want to enjoy what's happening,
And I think that there is enough in this movie to enjoy. So if you want to shut your brain off and watch this movie for the 20th time or whatever, that's fine. You've already fallen on the side of, I like this movie and I want to watch it. It's like, I've got movies where it's like, yeah, I can throw in One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest and watch it and not have to think about it.
Right.
So yeah, I understand that completely. And I appreciate that people appreciate this movie.
Word.
Next week, it's my turn. I get to pick a couple of movies the next 2 weeks.
How did you get to choose two? No, go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I chose two because you guys chose 3 of January's movies. If we want to play a zero-sum game, I'll play that. So next week we're going to go oldest movie by a bunch that we've ever covered on this blog or on this podcast, and that is The Treasure of the Sierra Madre.
Oh, I forgot we were doing that. That's fun. John
Huston's 1948. Got a bunch of scumbags in it, but interesting character developments and stuff like that. And we get Humphrey Bogart for the first time.
Nice.
Yeah, this is interesting because Susan, she's in a book club, and she just read The Maltese Falcon.
Oh, cool.
The novel for her book club. And so it's interesting. I've been circling early John Huston, Humphrey Bogart recently.
Yeah, this is a movie that many, many, many people pick as their favorite movie of all time. It's up there. It is a true classic, and I'm looking forward to.
It's been a long time since I've seen it. Yeah, it'll be good.
Next Monday we have Monster Mondays. That's my little monster show, and it's all positivity there. Now, it just so happens that the next movie is one of my favorite movies of the last several years. But it is, even when I watch a bad movie, it's all about the positivity. I just want to talk about 3 things I like about a movie. But next week on Monday is The Shape of Water.
Nice.
Oh, nice.
Love that movie. On the weekends, well, you can check out B Movie Enema. That's my website, bmovieenema.com. This Friday is Cannibal Girls, which was made by Ivan Reitman, starring Eugene Levy and Andrea Martin from SCTV, in a movie that is a sort of horror movie, but it was meant to be a send-up of the horror genre, of the exploitation genre. It does not succeed very well.
Oh, no.
And then the Saturday for B Movie Enema, the series, we're getting really close to the end of season 1. But with the 11th episode, it is Abraxas, Guardian of the Universe.
I've watched That's a good one.
Starring Jesse Ventura and Sven Ole Thorson. Those crazy muscle-bound guys. It's a fun little. It's not a fun little. It's a bad movie, but it gives me an opportunity to talk about comic books because it is heavily influenced by Jack Kirby's work on the Fourth World. All right, so hey, you can find all of our stuff filmseizure.com. That's Wednesdays episodes of Film Seizure, Mondays Monster Mondays. You got it. Go over to Facebook, Twitter. You can follow us there. If you are just kind of randomly looking for a podcast someplace, we are on SoundCloud, we're on Stitcher, we're on TuneIn, we're on Google Podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and Audible. So yeah, do those things. But fellas, I think it's time to take a trip to the Sierra Madre. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
All right,
go find some treasure.
That's right, and maybe kill each other over it. I didn't mean to say that out loud. Anyway, so until next week, I am Jeff Arbuckle.
I'm Chuck Moore.
That rattled my ear bones.
He's Jason Oliver. And you've been listening to Film Seizure.
There's the R's or L's, so yeah. Could you do the L?
Seizure. And cut.